Intuitively, we all know what you mean when you use the term mind. But in a very technical sense, it's very difficult to know what mind is. The so-called mind-body problem is one of the oldest problems in philosophy. Some people simply say the mind is what the brain does. So I suppose other psychologists would happily use the term mind with abandon and not worry about using it. A disembodied mind, in some sense, a computer is a disembodied mind. There's no, but it's interesting that certain people in artificial intelligence in the computer world started talking about the embodiment of artificial intelligence because they realized that until and unless you attach this software that we're using to represent the mind or the mental activity to something, it's hard to sort of know what it will do or what it is doing. Even the earliest computers had lights and things that would flash to give you some hint of what the computer was doing. So this question of mind is puzzling in many ways. And I have to mention that the motto for MIT is mens et manus, which is mind and hand. So I think anyone who's interested in technology realizes that the mind and the hand, the coupling between the mind and the hand is very, very critical here.
During evolution, and we're talking now thousands of years, organisms that required a dependence on a particular kind of food and didn't have the enzymes to digest that food, or somehow had a mutation so they couldn't digest that food, they died. They didn't survive to produce a lot of offspring, and so that line got lost. The theory is that humans evolved because there were a lot of hominids that are smart. I mean, a lot of the monkeys and apes are very smart. They're survivors of the animal kingdom. And there were probably hominids, well, we now know there were different strains of hominids. And we are derived, it doesn't even look like they can detect a blend, although some people think they are. But that's very controversial, and I'm not an anthropologist, so I probably don't know the newest stuff. But they think at one point there were lots of pre-humans, hominids, and that most of them died off. People have been finding genes that they think they found in very primitive animals, in Homo sapiens. So they think there was some inbreeding. And probably we kept those genes because they were good for something, right? In terms of humans, it was a question of individuals that developed capabilities that allowed them to survive in the environment they lived in. It looks like humans evolved first the Homo sapiens evolved first in Africa and then migrated. But they had to learn things in order to inhabit the colder regions of the country. Maybe nobody really knows whether the earliest quote-unquote humans were very hairy, but they would have to have incredibly warm coats to survive in northern Canada or something.
You know, one thing that we know over many centuries is that humans have really tried to take some of the load off memory by putting some of our memory into the environment. And that's taken the form of reading and writing and books and various kinds of media. Of course, recently it's taken a new direction with the development of computers and the internet. And what we see is that on the one hand now, in many ways, we have sort of put our semantic memory online, if you will. So through the use of Google and other search engines, we don't really need to have access in our own minds to facts about the world, because we can just look them up. Similarly, even for our memory for ongoing events, we can use our phones and other external devices to try to remind us of when we have to carry out important tasks. But I think that it would be a big mistake, even while acknowledging the role of external devices such as the internet and our phones and so forth in memory. It would be a big mistake to think that they're really a replacement for memory.
If you go back in history, I suppose the early cave dwellers sat around the fire with their families and told stories. And the children would listen with rapt attention to the story. Now that was clearly a virtual environment, because they were imagining with their mental model, if I may use the term, which we don't understand very well, they were imagining being there, fighting the bear, shooting the arrow, grappling with the rocks, whatever it was. And through history, we have developed theater, modern forms of technology in the way of recordings, starting with Thomas Edison and the gramophone. In other ways, I mean, the whole business of recorded music, of course, is a form of virtual environment. You're not really in front of the orchestra or the violinist. You're in a virtual environment, kind of imagining that you're there.
We use our memories to encode new experiences. So even if I don't need to I don't need to have a particular fact stored in my memory, because I can look it up on Google, if my memory is so impoverished that I don't have a rich network of facts and semantic associations through which I encode my new experience, I'm probably going to have a very impoverished understanding of the world and memory for the world, because we encode new experiences through our existing memories. So yes, external memory devices are in some ways taking over the role that our internal memories used to play, but I don't see them as replacing memory, because memory does so many things for us and in more subtle ways than a lookup on Google could ever replace.
In a very broad sense, Darwin had it right. It's the survival of the fittest. You move into environments because as the population grows, you're going to get too crowded. You can't get enough food. So you move, and then presumably you adapt to the environment.
We say to ourselves, and I think it's true, that technology is moving faster and faster. Where is that heading? Is it going to, faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster until it explodes or something? I don't know. I worry about it. I really do. As I say, I'm a technologist, I suppose. I'm a proponent of technology where it can be helpful, but at the same time, I am very aware that there's a downside to technology. I mentioned this Norbert Wiener effect of the God and Golem business. I think a lot of technologists are arrogant. There's a guy named Ray Kurzweil, have you ever run into that name? Who thinks he can live forever and so on, and he for a while worked for Google. He may still be employed by Google, but I think there's a kind of an arrogance, and even if he could live for a long time, I don't think I worry about the sort of a built-in arrogance to technology, that they think they can solve problems. You know, everything has a solution, and I'm not sure it does. A lot of things I think we don't. It gets back to this business of having respect for what we don't know. You know, respect for our ignorance.